All right, the meeting is being recorded. I just started the recording. Good morning, everyone. I see the snow missed us. We were supposed to have that nice snowstorm yesterday and missed us totally. I don't know if it missed all you guys, but doesn't break my heart. We didn't have to get the scraper out or anything. Our last meeting was held on January 17th, 2024. Elizabeth Fox with Johnson City School District presented on her in operating electric buses. So some of the things that she said was she's very positive about it. She said that our input is going to be valuable as mechanics as to where we go with the electric buses. She's only got, I think she had one where she is now, but she did come from a district that had 4, which now has 5. And so she's been working with them to get information on it. She said that Wi-Fi has to be really good. That's how all the chargers communicate, at least the ones that she has. She says that we need to look into funding because they are receiving $200,000 per bus. And I think she said that the bus had to be destroyed or something. But I would have to refer to that meeting to be exact. She said that you want to build a team so that you meet weekly to go over any issues, where you stand, the kilowatt hours, the chargers, the networking. Just want to go over all that. Her team was like the director, the school principals, just anybody who would be involved. You also need to get some first responder training. That's something that they worked on. She actually had an event there for first responder training, and there was a lot of people. I think it was over 100 people at that event, and it is on YouTube. You have driver training for the electric buses that she's working on. You need mechanic training. Again, I've got the grant opportunities that people need to look into. One of the issues that she had that, I don't know, I didn't really like it, but the chargers, when the bus reached a full charge, it went into a suspended mode instead of a trickle charge, like to maintain the battery. It went into a suspended mode, which meant that when the drivers got there in the morning, the batteries had cooled down. It didn't, and you're not at a full charge. You're only at like 80 or 90%. That would make a big difference, I think, using the electric bus for the day. But as we move forward, we're going to keep presenting on this stuff. We're going to try to keep everybody in the loop. She has Autel level 2 chargers. And I even have a note here that we want to put together a certification program through the head mechanic so that we can all be able to at least work on some of this stuff. Along with that, we just received 2 chargers, and as we're going to get some training on it, and as soon as we get the training, I'm going to keep everybody informed. They are Heliox, and we got them through Cummins. They're 480 volt, 50 kilowatt hours of output. And I've got a lot more specs on it, but I want to make sure we're going to get some training on it here, which is scheduled for next week. So at our next meeting, I will go over our chargers that we got and how they're all going to be, how we're going to be using them. They are the portable chargers. We had to run some new lines out in the shop. So I will give an update on that at our next meeting. Today's presenter will be Cody Shamrock with Leonard Bus Sales. He will be presenting on the next gen IC bus and the numerous changes that have been made. This is going to be a 2-part because our next meeting, what do I have it here? He'll be talking about the on-command connection and how they work together. So, all right, Cody, the floor is yours.
All right, let me get this screen sharing here, make sure I get the right spot. All right, can you see my screen and can you hear me okay?
All right, I see it's coming up. Yes, I can see the screen.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, I'll talk through changes to the IC bus that have been in the works and are now in production. So that's good news. Buses are definitely rolling down the line in Tulsa. So we're happy about that. Really, a lot of the changes that you're going to see are from what they call the zero bow forward. So zero bow is between the first window and the entry door. And the bulk of the changes are from that point forward. So really the only change from there back is the fuel tank. Otherwise, what you know and what you're familiar with stays essentially the same. So the buses are obviously being built as 2025 model year. The bus you know today that you have in your fleets was first unveiled in December of 2003 for the 2005 model year and remained relatively unchanged in that whole time. So we're really due for the refresh and happy to see the changes that they've made. So really some of the things that stay the same, as I said, are the body itself. We're still using 16 gauge steel on the body. There's no option to reduce that to say a 20 gauge. It's all 16 and it has been forever. The difference is if you go back to like the 2005 model year, the earlier IC buses, they were essentially coating the steel on the body in a 60 galvalume material. So they dip the metal in a liquid, and it's 60 galvalume is the rating. So that works okay in some climates. In our climate, it really doesn't. So what they've done is they've changed that in the last few years to a 90 galvalume coating, which basically protects the metal for longer. So anything from the windows down is 90 galvalume. Anything on the back of the bus, your exit doors, your cowl, that sort of thing are all in a 90 galvalume coating. So if you had earlier IC buses and it's been a while since you've had them in your fleet and you dealt with rust issues, that was something that they took care of, and they'll continue to do that. So one of the big differences with this bus, and something that we're excited about, is the front cab section. So from that zero bow forward is fully spot welded in a framer. So what that does is that takes that human element out of it, and you end up with a body structure that is more square, more straight, fewer water intrusion points because there's no rivets, there's no screws, it's all spot welded. So that's a really nice positive change to the front end. And I'll talk more about that, and I'll show you some pictures as well. So we can go as low as 30 passengers. We can go all the way up to 83 in a bus that does not exceed 40 feet. So I think, as we deal with driver shortages, I see schools doing a couple things. One of them is ordering larger buses, because you get 10 buses that can hold 4 or 5 more kids each, and all of a sudden you've reduced a run if you have the time to do that. The other option is they're contracting out runs, which is obviously not ideal for us, but we can go up to 83 passenger. Still standard with air drum brakes. You can get air disc unless you're going EV, in which case you have to have air disc brakes. We can do 65 or 100 gallon fuel tank. Either way, the difference now is in that 30 passenger capacity, you can get a 65 gallon tank, whereas before it was only a 40. We're seeing a lot more people looking at a 30 passenger type C bus because we've obviously had struggles across the industry with type A. So having the ability to have a higher fuel capacity is a nice change. Still Cummins engine, still electric as an offering. Right now, the electric and diesel platform are identical. So whatever powertrain you order, you're going to get the same bus at this point. So some of the visibility changes that are positive is you're going to see that the dashboard is really farther forward than it used to be. And what that does is basically moves the driver forward a bit. And if you were to measure from the ground, basically the driver can see 11 inches closer to the front of the bus now. So from a safety perspective, we've got better visibility in the front end. If you were around, which of course I was not, but back in the old S-Series days, you had the big square boxy hood. They've come a long way in improving visibility. So some of the smaller detailed things, and this is minor, but I share it anyway, is you can do multiple grill color options if you care. We do have some schools that are very particular about their color scheme and how they order. Probably the more interesting thing, though, or beneficial thing is available LED headlights. So you can upgrade these to an LED headlight, which I think headlights on school buses leave a lot to be desired and have for a long time. And this should be a better option going forward. Feel free to stop me if you have any questions or commentary as well. So our bumper in the front was increased to 1/4-inch thick material. So they used to have an option for 3/16 or 1/4, depending on the state spec. They've made everything 1/4-inch thick now for a more durable bumper. We can, of course, do the Naviflex coating on it, which is essentially a bed liner. If you're familiar with our stepwell, the way it's coated on both sides, the bumper is done the exact same way, same as the rear bumper. We're definitely seeing a lot more of that. Again, in our climate, that Naviflex coating is a really nice factory option to have. We still have the integrated crossarm. That has not changed. I know most schools in New York State are not running a crossarm, but that is a integrated system protected behind the bumper if you were to go that route. So some of the changes in glass are pretty big. The big one, probably the most important one, is that the windshield is now bonded and has much more curve to it, as you can see there. The problems with flat glass are pretty known at this point, as far as keeping the window clean. Leaks, streaking, that sort of thing become issues with flat glass like we've been dealing with for a long time. So we've now got a curved windshield. It is still 3-piece, so you can replace in sections if you need to. It is a thicker glass as well, so it is going to be a bit heavier, more durable to deal with, road debris and that sort of thing. The driver's window has been changed and is actually serviced from the outside. So you would pull that out from the outside of the bus, and they changed the latch on there as well. So this is nothing new. We have a latch at the front and rear of the window. Other manufacturers have been doing that forever. But they did change the latch design as well. One last thing, I guess, or two last things to note, is the rear window design has not changed at all. It's still roped in. I don't know if there are plans to change that. We'll see. But as of now, the rear window design is exactly the same as it was. It's roped in, and then we add additional silicone to that during our prep process. So door glass is now 1-piece also. I'll show you a picture of that here shortly. 1-piece door glass on each pane that is bonded in as well. So your mirrors, typically you stick with the same mirror type year over year, but there are situations where you have changed mirrors for whatever reason or another, whether it's a stability issue or blinding, high beams, whatever it is. The way the bus is designed now is the mirror hardware on the hood will stay the same regardless of what mirror head you put on. So what you can do is just change out the head of the mirror to the HD mirror that you see there. You can do the Roscoe Hawkeye, which is the rounded style. You don't have to change out hood mounting hardware. That stays the same all the time. The brackets are much more durable than they used to be. Especially the Roscoe mirrors tend to bounce around a lot going down the road, and we end up adding all kinds of bracketry to it to keep them stable, which in turn creates blind spots. So that is a positive change. Again, you can get multiple mirror heads as you need to. You can order a downlit LED mirror as well. I've seen these a couple times out in the world, and the idea is just to shine light straight down, in that kind of dangerous wheel well area, an area that the headlights really aren't capturing because they're projecting out farther. So that is an option that you can go with also. The only other note I have on mirrors here is the side view mirror there. You'll see comes out quite far. It looks, I think, worse in a picture than it actually is when you see it. But it is on a hinged bracket, so you can move that out of the way if you need to for some reason. The big thing was making sure that from the driver's seat, when the wipers were running, that mirror was in the wipe path, which meant pushing it forward just a little bit more to make sure that you're not having to lean too much to see down the side of your bus. You can still get stainless steel as well and several different mirror combinations. We have a few fleets that order the super nickels still, the big square mirrors. You can still get those. It's just depending. The brackets stay the same, but the mirror head can be changed out. Fuel tank, as I mentioned, stays. The tank itself is the same. What did change is the actual fuel tank cage itself. So right now you're probably familiar with the tubular type design, welded square tubing. They've changed that out, and it now resembles more of a skid plate, which is how they were able to squeeze that larger capacity tank into a smaller bus. So you will see differences in your fuel cage design. And then the other thing we can do now is Naviflex coat the fuel tank as well. So the coating on your step well, the front and back coating can be done on the fuel tank from the factory before installation. I think from a corrosion standpoint, if you're keeping your buses for 7, 8, 9, 10 years or longer, you're definitely changing out fuel tanks at some point, and having that coating on there from the factory will theoretically prevent you from ever having to change that tank out. So that's a really nice change that they've made. As far as lighting goes, you are now looking at multiplexed dome lights. So previous buses, the current buses on your lot, are all basically hardwired unless you had a feature code to change that. We're now multiplexed fully, so they are tied into the body controller. They are LED only. You cannot order incandescent dome lights inside of our bus anymore. Whether or not you change those out after the fact is up to you. Just keep in mind with a multiplex system, if you change the voltage online, it may cause some odd behaviors potentially. It's worth a shot if you want to try it. What they did do, though, is there were complaints that the LED lights were too bright, and that a lot of drivers didn't like that because of the sudden blinding. So they've actually toned them down from the factory to begin with, and then have also made an option for a dimmer switch. So you can actually get a dimmer on the dashboard that will dim or brighten your LED interior lighting if you want to. If some of the fleets will run where the door opens and the LED lights turn on inside, we can do that. Whatever lights you decide, the full cabin, 1 light, 2 lights, whatever, that's an option we've always had, but something that gets a little bit easier now with multiplexing. On the exterior, LED pin style clearance lights, basically industry standard at this point is the grommet mounted LED clearance light. So that is, again, something that you see across the industry in truck bus, and it's just kind of made it to the school bus now. So fewer mounting holes, screws, that sort of thing. Of course, you can change them out to something else if you want, but from the factory, that's what you're going to get. Some other changes. So you can see the one-piece door glass on that far right picture there. Again, that is bonded into the door. The door did change completely. They took really what was the standard school bus door design forever and threw it away and basically started from scratch. You'll see in the middle picture at the top there are, on the door frame itself, you're going to see latches. So then on the actual door pane, you're going to see a kind of receiver for that latch, or vice versa. And what happens when you close that door is those latches lock much like your car door would. So it holds that door closed. Going down the road, doors pulling open has been a problem for us for a long time. It's gotten better, but has been an issue. So that latches those doors shut going down the road, and they cannot be opened unless you use the release or the button to open the door. The other nice thing about that is when the bus is parked at night outside, when you close those doors, they latch shut. So you can pull on them. Wind can whip through the yard, and you don't need bungee cords or hood straps or clamps or whatever contraptions you've come up with to keep your doors closed. They do have a latch on them. So the far left picture there shows you the release for that door. So to actually open that door when you get there in the morning, you have to hold that release to open that door. That allows it to unlatch. Again, like your car, you can pull the door open and board the bus that way. So that latch will always be there on the outside of the bus. You can get it keyed or not, up to you. But this one that's shown here is a keyed version of that. So one feature that has also been added, and it's sort of a luxury feature, but it's nice, is when you use that release and the doors open, your interior dome lights come on as well, much like they would in your car, so that the driver can see as they come up the stairs, sit down, put the key in the ignition, start the bus, and then those dome lights will power off. So that's just a nice feature that, again, gives us more of that automotive style. And if you've ever gotten in a dark bus in the morning, it's either a flashlight or your cell phone light to try and see up the stairs as you sit down. All right, so entryway, the steps are still straight. There's no taper to them. We haven't changed that. There is a couple of configuration options for handrails now. So this right side handrail as you come up the stairs is an option, just as it always has been. This particular bus was built with it to show you the feature. Probably one of your questions immediately is, does this pass the nut drawstring test? If you're familiar with that, they basically tie a nut to a string and drag it around the railing to make sure that nothing can catch. The engineers tell me that it will pass that test. Because I did ask the question, because that mounting at the stepwell corner there makes me wonder, but it does pass the test and they can furnish that information if need be. So you can order it with the mid rail that you see there on the screen. That's great for smaller kids. The higher rail is nice too, as you have an attendant that might be working with kids going down the stairs. They need something to hold on to as well. And also just for taller high school students. Some of them are, 6'5" in high school, and the railings as they are now are quite low. So nice change there. The handrail on the seat side is identical to that, just mirrored and flipped around. But again, that's an option if you want that, the handrail that you see on the screen. You can get a trash bin from the factory mounted right in that space there as well if you choose. And then another big change is the stepwell heater is now in the back of the stepwell, so kind of underneath that first barrier. The difference between our bus and others is that ours can be serviced from inside the bus, so you can actually remove 4 or 5 screws and pull that heater into the bus to do any service that you need to do. So just to look at the stepwell area here, again, still straight stairs. We still use the Naviflex coating. In the picture on the right, you can see that stepwell heater in there. Again, if you need to get to that, it's easy to service from inside the bus. It's fully enclosed on the outside, so there's nothing to service on the outside of the bus, nothing to be hit by weather and road debris and all that sort of stuff. So another note is the plastic trim around. Let me see if I can pull up my pointer here. Bear with me. If you guys hopefully can see that laser pointer there, it looks like you can. The plastic trim here, or the trim here on either side, is now a composite as opposed to steel. So that's something we've dealt with for a long time, is rusting there. That was eliminated. So now we've got, basically plastic or composite trim on the stairwell. And then this modesty panel here is now coated in that 90 Galvalume chemical wash and then painted on both sides as well. So right now, the current buses, or the buses we're used to, this modesty panel within just a few months is starting to rust and corrode, and they've taken care of that problem as well. And just another look out the entry door here. And then you'll notice that the emergency release has been moved over to the area right of the door. It's still within reach for small students, and this is the way out of the bus every time. Our current bus, when you key off, the door loses pressure. The case with this door is a little bit different. Because it latches, you have to actually flip this release to exit the bus. So it's a little bit different. So I mentioned some of the corrosion resistance type stuff they've dealt with. One of my favorite features is, and it's a small one, but to me it is important, is the floor mat in the driver's area now. All the way up under the pedals, as you can see, is one piece. So from the white line forward, this is one basically WeatherTech mat, if you want to think of it that way. There is no metal trim. There are no exposed fasteners. So keeping it clean is better if you are somebody that likes a clean bus. I know some drivers don't care, but I'm always the type that likes a clean vehicle. The other nice thing is it does mold up the doghouse here. So water will not run down and soak the plywood floor around the doghouse as well. On that note, the doghouse is removable. If it has to come off for whatever reason, you can remove that doghouse still. That does not change. So driver's compartment. The cup holder is now a standard feature. I point that out because there's been this sort of, I want to call it a myth, but this thought that you cannot have a cup holder in a school bus in New York State, but every type A on your lot probably has a cup holder in it. School buses are allowed to have them, and we've decided to make it our standard. You can omit that if you choose. Some of the logic behind that, and if you've heard me present this before, you've heard this, but drivers are not supposed to have beverages, of course, in the bus, water, coffee, whatever. The problem is that some of them are going to do it anyway, whether we like it or not. And better to at least give them a place to put it where it's secure than have them create their own version of a cup holder by screwing something to the dash, going to Harbor Freight and buying a magnetic one, leaning it on the windowsill, whatever it is. So that is there. You can omit that if you choose to, but that has been made standard for us. We have USB-A, C, and 12-volt ports now. So drivers that do a lot of sports trips will have more options for their cell phone charger, their GPS if they use one, whatever it might be. They're more automotive style. Optional adjustable pedals, still that has not changed. We can do armrests on either side of the seat now. It used to be right side only. Now you can do both. We can order from the factory a telematics bracket, which you can see on the bottom right here, kind of what that looks like. And over here on the right side dash, you'll see there's a lot of room now for mounting a tablet. If you run tablets in your fleet or are thinking about doing that, there is a dedicated spot for it. One of the issues we've run into with the current design, especially as technology becomes more prominent, is you have a tablet on the right side, but you also want your door controls on the right side. And now you've got, issues with real estate, basically. So we've got a lot of space freed up over here. Probably the biggest change from a driver's perspective that they're going to appreciate. They might not like certain things because it's different, but they will appreciate that dash air conditioning is standard on every bus now going forward. So you don't have to order it. You can choose to omit dash air if you want, but you're not going to gain much from doing that. The difference between this bus having standard dash air and upgrading later is this is built on the line in the bus plant with the intention of having dash air to begin with. If you order a bus with dash air conditioning now, they build the bus, they park it, they take it down the street, somebody else does an upfit to add that dash air, and then you get the bus. So you're dealing with aftermarket installers that don't really care about oil filter access or, keeping the plumbing neat. This is built from the factory on the line with it. And because it's built on everything, it's just part of the production process now. So you will have dash air conditioning as a standard, and you'll see around the driver, you've got vents as well that will keep them cool. I guess I'll note while I'm at it, the left side driver's heater that most people loathe at this point is gone. There is no heater to the left of the driver anymore. So there's no removing the seat to service a blower motor or resistor. The driver's floor heater is above the pedals, basically like your car would be. So there's a vent in there that keeps the driver's feet warm without burning off their left leg. So that is another positive change. With that, too, actuators now connected to the HVAC controls, no cables, no plastic gears. It's all electronically actuated. So really nice changes there. Just another look at the driver's area. Again, as you come up the stairs, kind of what you're looking at there. You'll see the fire extinguisher and triangles are mounted to the floor back here. The fire extinguisher location is intended to always be there. I actually like that better because you can see the needle now. That's been an issue, I think, for a long time, is you can't see the needle easily during a pre-trip. The triangles are standard on the floor, but I know some schools do not want them there. So, of course, that can be changed, as needed. Again, just another look at the driver's compartment here. A lot neater floor. Again, HVAC controls are all actuator controlled with vents for the driver. One thing you'll notice is the absence of an obvious gear shift. Allison is really pushing manufacturers toward an electronic gear shift, and so we've got that now on the right side of the column. Turn to drive, turn to reverse is the way you're going to put this bus into and out of gear. Left side panel, if you order your door controls on the left-hand side, your door switch will always be at this top left position here. And then, of course, this is always going to change depending on the configuration of your bus and your options. Everybody does something a little bit different. So your right side controls here, they did change the hazard switch location from behind or on the steering column to the right side of the dash now. That has been a complaint for a long time, is having to reach through the steering wheel for hazard activation. In fact, I know of at least one person that has failed a DMV road test because they reached through the steering wheel to activate that, and the examiner felt that was unsafe. So kind of an interesting change there. You're going to see also an electronic parking brake, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then this particular bus that I'm showing has Wingman Fusion collision mitigation. So there's a couple of extra things that you may not have on your bus, but just to show you some of the basic features and setup here. So the IntelliPark system is through Bendix still. Your plumbing stays the same. You still have primary, secondary air and exhaust, and then a feed to your R7 valve. That's all identical to the way it's always been. The difference with the electronic parking brake is you can activate it with a pinky. So push to release, pull to apply as always, but you don't have the strain injuries that occur. We've seen rubber grips get used. We've seen metal pull tabs used for parking brakes. All of that goes away with the electronic parking brake. Probably the bigger benefit of it is rollaway mitigation. So if the driver gets out of their seat with the parking brake off, within a few seconds, the parking brake will set itself so that the bus cannot roll away. Other part of that is if the bus is rolling, let's say while it's in neutral for any period of time, the parking brake will set as well. From a maintenance standpoint for you guys, because you're going to be doing brake services where you want that parking brake released, you do have to put it into a kind of maintenance mode. I pulled up the document right before this meeting, and there are several steps, but the gist of it is holding the parking brake while turning the key off and on several times, and going through a series of steps to put it into a maintenance mode. If you have Bendix ACOM Pro, you just put it in maintenance mode very easily. So it's going to depend on what you guys run and whatnot. Can you leave the seat belt buckled and get out of the seat in the shop and leave it released that way? I don't know the answer to that yet. My thing is, if you turn the bus off, I think eventually that parking brake is going to set. So we'll figure that out here shortly. John, you have a question?
Yeah, you see when you turn the bus off, the parking brake will set because you're losing power. What if you lost power to that switch while the bus is in motion? Will that automatically apply to brakes?
No. So it's built with all of the same kind of operational fail safes as the current, mechanical pneumatic valve. So that because that was a question that's come up a couple times, is what happens if? And the answer is the bus will, it'll continue to roll until the driver stops, basically, and then they can set it themselves. I don't know all the algorithm that's built into that, to be honest, but DOT brake stops stay the same as well. That doesn't change.
Hey, Cody,
Go ahead, Dan.
well, because he just asked a question, I actually had a question on that as well. What if you had to tow this bus? Would you have to go in and, would we need ACOM Pro if the driver was going to have it towed?
It's a great question. So you don't need ACOM Pro. You can put it into maintenance mode very in a kind of a manual way from the driver's compartment. That's a good question. I would think probably you're going to have to put it in maintenance mode to tow it. I don't have enough experience with this yet to say for sure, but I'm going to make a note of that actually, because that's a really, my pen just fell apart. It's a really good question. Let's see. You can get the Bendix document online as well that talks about going through maintenance mode and how you do that. It's a little cumbersome. Like I said, it's a lot of key cycles and that sort of thing, but which we know buses love short key cycles and fault codes that those can cause. So we'll see. Good question, though. I'm going to check and follow up on that. So I mentioned the gear shift already. You'll see on the truck side that they use the exhaust brake is controlled through this. That is not the case on school bus. We still have a separate exhaust brake switch if you order it with that feature. But that's your gear shift now. Basically is back for reverse, forward for drive, and that's how the driver will shift gears. So no more dealing with bound up linkages and hard to move T-bars where the pin breaks and the handle falls off, middle of the run kind of stuff. So collision mitigation, every bus is still built standard with advanced, Wingman Advanced. The change here is that the bus now has the collision mitigation in the center display of the gauge cluster. So that driver interface unit box on the right side goes away, and you see now it's integrated here. The particular bus on the right side picture here has wingman fusion, so you're not going to have lane departure on your standard bus, but just to give you an idea of what you're going to see in that display. Again, the whole gauge cluster has changed now. Still have your warning light indicators, emergency exits, all of that kind of stuff. Still have standard steering wheel controls if you choose that. A lot of our schools, I'd say the majority, go with controls on the steering wheel. Some of you want them on the left side only or the right side only or some combination of the above. You can do it however you want. The difference now is that cruise control will always stay on the steering wheel. Right now, depending on how you order switches or on previous buses, it would move cruise control to the right side or put it on the steering wheel. Now that doesn't change. It's always on the wheel, which I think is, from an operator standpoint, easier to operate and more familiar, to us with what we use in our cars. Still door open and close switch, still have your amber activation switch, your red override in the center here. And then these 1, 2, 3, 4 switches are actually programmable to whatever you want. So they are multiplexed, and you can basically decide what you want those switches to be. We haven't set any kind of standard for that, but as people run these, I'm sure that they'll come up with reasons to have those programmable switches with a feature tied to them. So just another look at the driver's area here as a whole. It's quite a bit different, but still uses the wing style dash and a lot of the things that we're used to having. So mechanically, some of the updates that you guys would care about is all of your body fuses are now, your chassis fuses are in the right side dash underneath this cover. So you can pop that cover off, get to all of your fuses. They're not on the firewall, hard to reach now. They're right there. They did put an integrated gutter around that, so if a driver dumps their coffee on the dashboard, it's not going to soak this panel in coffee. So that's a small detail, but an important one. We did change or move the air dryer. Now is behind the front bumper. We are ordering all of the buses with a splash shield here as a standard from basically December onward, but the first batch will not have that splash shield to protect this air dryer. You can obviously order that and add it if you choose to, but we've decided to add that as a standard. It does use a spin-on cartridge. The dryer itself is not a new dryer. It's been out there for a long time. It's just new to us. And then the governor itself is actually integrated into the dryer itself and can be serviced separately. So there are essentially fewer external plumbing points, which means fewer places for a leak and easier service here. I've definitely come across people in my travels that did not know that air dryers need service, and I'm hoping that seeing a spin-on cartridge will be a good indication that, yeah, this thing probably needs to be serviced. So easy to work on that way. Some under the hood stuff. You'll like that the wiper linkages are now accessible from under the hood. You don't have to take the dashboard apart to adjust wipers. So that's a positive change as well. And then you'll see your primary fluid checkpoints, power steering, oil, transmission, all of that are easily accessible on this side. We use shocks on the hood now instead of the spring that we're used to. A lot of this is dictated by Cummins, but because we brought the cab forward, it does move some of these components forward a little bit. But again, easy service there. And if you haven't had a Cummins in your fleet in a while, the crankcase vent filter that used to be mounted on top of the engine is now mounted at the back, but does not have a service interval. So you won't need to worry about getting to the back of the engine to change that filter out in normal circumstances. Another look at the under the hood area here. You've obviously got a cabin air filter now that needs to be changed out, which is mounted or accessible from the side. Different coolant surge tank, different air filter. Definitely some different components, but nothing terribly unusual. One of the nice things about these components is that they're shared with the truck side of Navistar. So they're not a unique to bus part or filter. They're something that we can get from any international supplier. Just a couple other photos here showing the driver storage compartment, the stairwell. And I think this is my last one. So I guess if anybody has any questions, happy to answer them. And otherwise, I'm all set.
Okay, so the air governor is now part of the air dryer, correct? So there's
That's
no air governor underneath the hood anymore.
correct. It's right in the dryer assembly itself and can be taken out if you need to service that separately.
Okay. Another thing that I had, can you just go over that door latch mechanism again? Is that mechanical or is it air or electric?
So the door itself is, we still order air doors. That doesn't change. The actual mechanism itself is mechanical. If it it'll be electronic if it can be electronic. We'll put it that way. If it needs to override that for some reason, there is a spring, basically cable mechanical connection that will allow that door to open, so that you can exit the bus without battery power or whatever the situation might be.
Yeah, that was my concern, is if you get out there and the battery's dead, are you going to be able to open those doors?
Yeah. It's still, you can still mechanically release it with that lever.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions for Cody?
Yeah, I got. If the bus is dead, then you can't release the brakes, correct?
Yeah, theoretically, you wouldn't be able to, right?
And I don't know if you were there, George, when we spoke about that, the parking brake in order to tow it, he was going to look into that.
Yeah,
I was there for that, but it
Oh.
just seems like if it's dead, you're not even going to be able to. What do you get? Can you cage them or what?
yeah, and you can. I mean, you have the option if you choose to change back to a standard push-pull valve from the factory. You can order that instead. I think I'll look into that as well. But knowing electronically that it relies on that to release, you're probably right. Yeah, it can't. If the battery's dead, then you're not releasing brakes.
Roger.
Our experience with IntelliPark is it's a 12-volt system. If the brakes are not set, you can't set the brakes if there's no power. So if you don't have the brake set and you don't turn on the ignition, the brakes aren't on. Now, the only difficulty is servicing the brakes. As Cody has mentioned, there is a routine to go through a maintenance procedure to keep the system from setting the parking brake automatically every 30 seconds. But as far as the brakes applying, towing, I think we're in the same situation. If you didn't turn the ignition on and that module never energized, it's not going to turn on the park brake. But again, if the system's dead and the park brake's applied, you're not going to get it off without releasing the cylinders themselves.
Okay. John Hazelton.
Yeah, on the IntelliPark, sometimes that maintenance system works when you put it in maintenance mode, sometimes it doesn't, and you don't want that to kick on when you're doing your brakes. You can trick the system with the key on. You wedge something on the gas pedal, it thinks the vehicle's moving. The computer thinks the vehicle's moving, and then the brakes won't apply.
That's the
You can't do that for hours on end now.
During for example, the norming a DOT brake check, where you're doing this systematically through, we just have the driver just push on the accelerator pedal at least every 30 seconds or continuously, just to maintain some pressure on it, and it won't come on.
Okay, any other questions? All right, not seeing any, we will move on. I want to thank you, Cody, for your presentation. It's a lot of information there, an awful lot of changes. If you guys do come up with any questions and you start thinking about this, or you watch this again and you have more questions, please let me know, and I will make sure that it gets to Cody, and that way I'll put it out to everybody, because I'm sure we'll all have more questions as we move along. Go back here. Okay. As I've said, this is part 1 of 2, so On March 13th will be our next meeting, and Cody's going to speak about on-command connection and how that interface goes right along with the buses, the new bus. We want to keep the meeting topics coming. We're getting quite a few of them now. If you think of a meeting topic, we still need a couple to wrap up this year. Go ahead, Cody.
I'm just while you're talking, I was just checking on the towing part of this, and they say basically in the event of need to tow, you have two options. One is, of course, to mechanically cage the spring brakes. The other is to put the truck or bus into vehicle maintenance mode. So you would have to either do it the old school way or show up with Bendix ACOM on a laptop, which the tow truck driver is probably not going to have. So just wanted to throw that out there. It is in the book. It's addressed, but it's only 2 quick bullet points.
Okay. All right. So yeah, keep the meeting topics coming. We still need, I think, another meeting or 2 for this year. And then we have our DOT roundtable, which is going to be on June 12th. So as we're going forward here, think about questions, email them to me, and we'll make sure that we have get all of our questions answered by DOT. And these electronic brakes, that's a good one. They're going to be working right with us with this stuff. So we're going to need to know. The summer seminar is on its way. It's going to be July 11th. I've already reached out to a lot of the vendors, and they're already getting back to me. So it's going to be a go for this year. There's somebody else who's handling the members. So they will be reaching out to you guys shortly, I'm sure. And the last thing I want everybody to think about is helping out a little bit. We need a treasurer and a vice president for the head mechanics here. Like I said, at every meeting, it's not a lot of work. If you just try it and it doesn't work out for you, that's okay. We're not going to make anybody do anything, but we do need some help. So does anybody have anything else to add to today's meeting? Okay, not seeing anything. I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting. Again, remember this meeting was recorded, so it'll be on our YouTube channel so you guys can review it. We'll see everybody later.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
No problem. We'll see you
Thanks,
later.
Jerry.